And ladies and gentlemen, last but by no means least, we have Barton Gold. The ASX code is BGD. And joining me today is Alex Scanlon. He is the managing director. They listed in June of this year, and the last time we spoke, it was just after listing, getting their boots on the ground. And between then and now, they have been very busy adding shareholder value. Alex, good to see you. Let's talk about Barton Gold, because it's got projects in South Australia, Tarkula and Tonkillia, but just a brief background on who you are.
Sure, yeah, like the last time we spoke, we had really just listed at the end of June, and I think we really kind of went through our plans. That was really focused on a lot of pre-IPO technical work that we've done and what we were looking at doing moving forward. So just, I think, kind of very broad background for people who aren't necessarily aware of our story. We are an advanced explorer with really prime position in the central Gawler Craton of South Australia. So really a world-class province in many respects, but also a proven but sort of long forgotten gold district. We've got about 4,700 square kilometers of ground. That includes wholly owned, sort of 100% owned ground, as well as joint venture interests. But we have a very unique profile on the market. Really, we're a pure play sort of South Australia gold focused explorer developer. We also bring a really strong innovation focus in everything that we're doing. So we're looking to take a leadership role in the central Gawler Craton and really South Australia as it comes to the gold industry from a number of different angles. And we get also a lot of support from the government there. So that's kind of another unique angle for us, which is very helpful. We completed an IPO in June of this year. We raised $15 million before costs. And since then, we've been extremely busy. I think we promised people that we were going to be doing quite a bit of work. We have done that, and we have executed with success. So looking at what we were doing, our approach to this region is really based on a new approach. So it's an area that's been underexplored for the past 20 years or so. Really no modern systematic exploration until Barton Gold acquired this ground. As you mentioned, our focus really is on Tarkula and Tonkillia, so what we call kind of our southern development hub area or southern hub. The reason being that the sort of 2 years of work that we did pre-IPO was a lot of technical work to really set the stage for post-IPO exploration. We did a lot of aeromagnetics, we did regional seismic reinterpretation, some test drilling, structural studies. We reprocessed all the historical data we could get our hands on. And all of this work together, so the historical stuff and our new work, demonstrated that these assets, in particular Tarkula and Tonkillia, were really much larger than previously known and much more prospective. At Tarkula, we identified a completely new regional structural model that gave us about a 14-kilometer long initial target zone for sort of repeats of the high-grade Perseverance shear that fed that high-grade mine there that was operating in 2017, 2018. And at Tonkillia, we did a full teardown of the resources and the geology, and we actually remodeled it as a new 965,000 ounce resource with the potential for kind of a higher grade core and also some major sort of local and regional extensions. So we had these two sort of large scale mineral systems with significant new discovery potential. And in essence, our starting platform coming out of the gates at IPO, if you will, is sort of 1.1 million ounce resource and a mill. So our starting point is really the end goal that you tend to see for a lot of explorers, but we're really sort of aiming much larger here. We think there's much greater potential. So we completed our IPO. We launched very, very hard on that sort of post-IPO technical work, starting with a good framework. Since completing our IPO, we've done about 10,300 meters of drilling.
Wow.
We've done 2.6 square kilometers of ground penetrating radar on the Tarkula mining lease. So we're the first company to trial this particular tech on this particular terrain. We've done about 80 square kilometers of regional gravity surveys. And in terms of the results, it's really actually been pretty spectacular. We're very happy with how things have gone. We've identified 25 new targets on the Tarkula mining lease itself. We've identified.
Sorry to interrupt you, Alex. With those 25 new targets, that's on Tarkula, was it?
Correct, just on the mining lease. So the mining lease is a very small subset of the 1,200 square kilometer Tarkula project. So we basically identified a number of areas where we have sort of, I guess we'd say we validated the structural targets that we sort of theorized were there. And then we found another 24 targets that were previously unrecognized in terms of shallow, broad structure sitting just below surface on the mining lease itself. So pretty exciting stuff, and it gives us things that we can follow up really, really quickly. We can target very aggressively and very efficiently. And that's really, again, just a part of the bigger picture of Tarkula.
Again, I did, sorry to
Yeah.
interrupt you, but why do you think those were missed in the past? Are you using new technologies? Are you using a new methodology? Why are you finding these?
Yeah, look, a combination of new technology and just the application of attention and capital. So in the past, the Central Gullah Craton is an area where you typically are sort of combating exploration undercover. So it's not as easy to find just significant outcropping mineralization and structures as we sort of tend to do on sort of the fairmost eastern margins of Queensland and a lot of WA. So we've been very focused on doing a lot of new and high-tech work to basically see through that cover, and that's really paid dividends. That was how we identified some of these priority targets in the first place, which we've now validated. But everything we're doing is really kind of saying, okay, well, now we've validated these 2 or 3 targets, but hey, here's another 5 or 10 or 15 or 20 more. On the mining lease itself, why might these not have been seen? In really simple terms, to identify these 25 targets and their orientation, you might have had to do 15,000 meters of drilling, which would be, $3 million, including corporate costs. It might take 2 to 3 years. We brought in new tech and trialed this particular deep ground penetrating radar on this type of terrain. And we got very good resolution down to about 50 or 70 meters of depth. And so we could actually see these structures coming up to just under surface. And for context, these 25 targets come up to within 10, 8, 5 meters of surface, but not at all visible or discernible on surface. So you've got to kind of look through. And the conventional model of calcrete sampling can be very inefficient in this area because of transported cover. So it's different approach, and then actually applying the capital and the attention to it. It's an area that's been capital starved for a very long time.
And therefore, using this new technology, being able to see, as you say, through the cover, makes it more efficient and better use of capital for, I guess, shareholder funds, really, isn't it?
Correct. So those 25 targets we identified, it cost us about $200,000 to do that, as opposed to, say, $3 million worth of drilling in 2 to 3 years of time. So it's really an order of magnitude efficiency gain in the way that we're going about identifying targets. But that also gives you the opportunity to test them more efficiently. So again, we don't need to roughly hone in on a target here. We have an idea of where these structures are, but also their orientation. So we can put in 10 drill holes to test something instead of a pattern of 50 drill holes. So now that we've identified them as well, we can still, again, be more efficient with the actual drilling to test these targets. So it's pretty exciting stuff. And the fact that these targets are all within 1.5 kilometers of the open pit, that really is sort of, it's very exciting, but that's just the mining lease. And it really, I think, is just a hint of really what Tarkula is capable of becoming as we continue to build our footprint outward.
Yeah, I guess my next question was going to be how much exploration you're doing outside of the mining lease on Tarkula?
So Tarkula, right now, we have just finished doing our regional gravity surveys. And so we're still waiting for that data to come back. When we get that data back, we will then integrate that with all of the other bodies of data, or the broader data set that we have at Tarkula. And then we will step out and target a lot of our regional structures and regional targets that we identified last year. So we've already got a long list of priority targets. And what we really want to do is hone in on the bestest, if you will. So that we've found the combination of gravity surveys and magnetics is a really good way. If you have 2 high resolution data sets, is a really good way to pick up structure. And we're finding that our shallow view on structure and predictions of structure is matching the deeper view that we got from our regional seismic reinterpretation. So once we have that data back and integrated, that's when we'll be in a position to go out and sort of reload the drill bit, if you will, go back out, do a phase 3 program at Tarkula, and test not only some of the most exciting targets on the mining lease, but then get out into the regional exploration targets and target what we think will be the highest prospectivity targets for new and significant discoveries.
On the mining lease itself, you're finding quite a bit of gold. Can you talk us through what sort of grade, what sort of widths, and how deep? What are you finding at the moment?
Yeah, so look, we did some drilling around the open pit, and where we're really focused at the open pit on the mining lease is on the southern end. So the southern end is where we identified last year the very beginnings of the Perseverance West gold zone. And this year's drilling, we did about 5,000 additional meters at Tarkula. That follow-up has basically now confirmed that Perseverance West Gold Zone and converted that into about a 350-meter strike extent of the open pit. We've also, in our drilling, identified about a 200-meter depth extension of that sort of southern end of the open pit. So it's actually two distinct gold zones, which gives some pretty interesting opportunities to look at, essentially just extending that pit, both to depth, but also along strike. To put it in context, that pit is only 75 meters deep, approximately at that southern end. So it's a very easy extension as a pit. We also identified some high-grade drilling results at the north end of the pit. So we've got a good case to essentially lower the profile of the pit, go to depth more broadly, but essentially continue down going into that south-southwest corner. And in terms of some of the drill results we got there, we got some pretty interesting results. A couple examples: 7 meters at 9.72 gram per ton from about 42 meters depth. Some other lower grade but higher, broader intersections as well, sort of 9 meters at 1.7 from 76 meters depth, 5 meters at 4.75 from 106 meters, 4 meters at 11.38 from 107 meters, and kind of the headline one was 5 meters at 48.91 gram per ton from 115 meters. So
that's ridiculous.
Some pretty interesting stuff as you look just past the edge of the current pit wall.
And how do you pull all this together? Two questions here. How do you pull all that together, number one? Number two, is Tarkula the focus, or are you going to be doing as much on Tonkillia? I mean, we'll get to Tonkillia, but is Tarkula more of a focus at the moment, given what you're finding and potentially how much more you're finding there?
Look, I think it's fair to say they're both a big focus. It'd probably be best to say that our southern hub is our focus. And that is the Tarkula and the Tonkillia project. They're only about 70 kilometers apart from one another. So they actually live together quite naturally as a development proposition. And looking at Tarkula versus Tonkillia or together, they're pretty distinct geological sort of circumstances. Tarkula tends to be narrower, higher grade mineralization, whereas Tonkillia is this large scale disseminated, shear hosted, kilometers long stuff, the kind of thing that you drive kind of an 8-lane highway through in development.
Right.
So to look at one or the other, we see multi-million ounce potential at both of these projects, and we're really just sort of scratching the surface at both. But Tarkula is really sort of the high grade supplement to what we see Tonkillia emerging as the lower grade base load. And really that these two can work in tandem. And the more interesting that one becomes, the more interesting the other becomes, because they're so close together. So we'll kind of, we'll see how things unroll, if you will. But we sort of like to jokingly say we're going to see which, make the kids fight to see which one we favor.
Love it.
But they're both coming up with exceptional results at the moment. So
they're both favorite children, but are they on the same geological structure? Because you said they're 70 kilometers apart. Do you think that if you keep doing some more exploration, there could be some joining up, or are they two separate structures?
So the Tonkillia project sits on the Yarrabrinda shear zone and the Yurta shear zone. So it's a distinct set of structures to Tarkula, but you have some very similar structures up at Tarkula as well. So up at Tarkula, for example, we have the Lake Labyrinth shear zone, which runs across our tenement. That's the tenement where Indiana Resources are, just off our tenement, also doing some exploration at the Minos prospect. And they're having some great results there. But the Tarkula tenement essentially sits at the sort of junction, or the sort of central meeting point of 3 crustal plates where they come together in the middle of the central Gawler. And so we've got a lot of shear zones. We have a lot of very complex crushed up geology, a lot of things that create a lot of potential fluid pathways or places for mineralization to settle out. So two very big systems, but two distinct systems.
When we last spoke, as you said before, you'd only just listed, you'd done a lot of work beforehand. Right now, I'm talking to you November the 18th. We're coming up to Christmas. Have you still got a lot of work going on at Tarkula in the lead up to Christmas? I guess what I'm getting at here, Alex, is what can investors hope to hear from? Are there assay results coming out? How many rigs have you got on the ground? What's happening between now and, say, listen, the February Gold Conference next year?
Yeah, so we've finished our what we call our Tarkula phase 2 drilling program, which commenced immediately post IPO. Alongside that drilling program, we did the ground penetrating radar. We also have done the regional gravity surveys. That data is still coming back to us. And we are also kicking off phase 1 of our regional soil geochemical sampling program. So we announced recently a sort of an R&D joint venture or collaboration project with CSIRO and Portable PPB. So we're going to go and do the first phase of that program before Christmas as well. And what that will do is that will allow us to integrate all of this new data, both ground penetrating radar, gravity, soil sampling, take that, integrate it with our new 3D regional structural model, which we came up with last year, and then figure out, okay, of these 20 targets that we have, what are the 5 or 6 absolute best ones that we really want to target to go back and hit really hard with the drill rig. The idea being that we go back early in the new year, once the temperature drops below 50 degrees, and get after those very aggressively.
Let's just move on because, we don't have a lot of time. Let's move on to Tonkillia, what you're doing there right now.
Yeah, so look, we've also just finished up a round of drilling there. We did just over 5,300 meters of drilling. And we have identified 2 new gold zones as well as a high grade zone in the middle of our existing 223 deposit. So, when you think about Tonkillia, again, we're about 70 kilometers southeast of Tarkula, about 50 kilometers of strike on these 2 large shear zones that are fairly analogous to the Kalgoorlie shear zone style systems. And, the reason we're focused there is we have this sort of initial cornerstone or I guess a cornerstone 965,000 ounce resource at about 1.15 gram per ton. So that's what we call the 223 deposit. Mm-hmm. And for a bit of context, that sits on about 2.5 kilometers of strike. But looking back historically, what we saw in the historical drilling databases was a lot of data indicating that previous sort of shallow RAB scout drilling had identified some very interesting sniffs of gold mineralization sitting just below the cover. So the cover down here is 30 to 40 meters deep.
Wow.
And as traditional explorers typically do, a whole lot of RAB drilling in a straight line, but they were coming up with these drilling results where they're getting just through the cover and then stopping. And from the year 2000, the majority of drilling was actually focused on infilling that 223 deposit and creating what is now that deposit area. So we looked at that drilling data. We also did a whole bunch of new geophysical analysis, and we basically worked out that we thought we had identified a couple of models that were predictive for gold mineralization, where you have magnetic susceptibility coincident with resistivity and some other signatures that we picked up in our modeling. And then, of course, that's really nice with that overlays with historical gold mineralization or drilling. But so our program at Tonkillia post IPO really targeted some of our highest priority targets, and the results were exceptional. So we identified a new 800 meter long gold zone at the 223 North target area. So this is about 500 meters north of the 223 deposit. We had theorized that whereas previously the prior explorers had kind of missed what we thought was the target, they've been drilling essentially in a linear fashion. We theorized that there was more of a western offset of this mineralization based upon our geophysical analysis. So we drilled it hard, we hit it, we found about 800 meters of mineralization, shallow mineralization that looks a lot like the 223 deposit and its shallower depths. And that looks like it's open to potential extension for about another kilometer of mineralization with some additional infill drilling. About 3 kilometers northeast, we are testing a similar but slightly different sort of geophysical thesis. And we found a new 650 meter gold zone at the area 191 prospect. So we've added about 1.5 kilometers of new gold mineralization at the Tonkillia project. So about a 60% strike increase versus the original 2.5 kilometers of strike that is the 223 deposit. And we've also put in some drill holes testing a central area of the 223 deposit. When we acquired this, it was sort of common knowledge or conventional wisdom that it was just this very large, low grade, unexciting deposit. But we're
running out of time. Sorry, Alex. Keep going, but we've got about 30 seconds left.
No worries. We remodeled that and we drilled it. And we found indeed there is this sort of high grade zone that's currently about 250 meters long. So look, we're really staying quite busy on everything and very excited for how things are going.
Well, I got to ask you very quickly, Why should people invest in Barton Gold right now? Give me 3 reasons. That's my thing.
Yep.
3 reasons.
Number one, look, it's an overlooked large scale opportunity, right? So we've got prime position in 2 large scale systems in some of the best historical gold ground in the Gawler Creighton. The region's been overlooked, and we've already proven our point with the immediate exploration success post IPO. Second, jurisdiction, Australia unquestionably tier 1 country, but South Australia also adds tier 1 support. We have got a lot of support from the government that's given us some unique advantages having a South Australian focus, and we're working very closely with them on a number of initiatives that we think are going to add a lot of value over time. And third and finally, really, it's about the strategy and the team. We were very diligent in our pre-IPO work. We knew exactly what opportunities we were after. We've proven our ability to execute in a very difficult environment with COVID, and we've been delivering very significant results with every program. So we plan to keep that up. We're very well funded. We've got over $12 million in cash as of quarter end. So we will keep going for quite some time.
Great. Thank you so much. We've run out of time. Alex Scanlon, Barton Gold. Check him out, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you.